Did you know that in the early 16th century, while European cities were drowning in filth and disease, there existed a city so clean, so advanced, and so well-fed that it surpassed anything the Old World had ever seen? A city where fresh, clean water flowed through its streets, where food waste and human waste was meticulously collected and recycled, and where markets overflowed with food so abundant that it fed hundreds of thousands of people daily, making it easily the best-fed city in the world. This was the capital of the great Aztec Empire, Tenochtitlan, known today as Mexico City, and at the time of its discovery by the Spanish, it was one of the greatest cities in human history. In fact, the Spanish were so filthy and disease-ridden, they were the ones who seemed barbaric. The early 16th century was a time when famine and scarcity plagued much of the world. Tenochtitlan was a city of unparalleled abundance. Its markets were a cornucopia of food. The Aztecs had perfected a system of agriculture so efficient that it fed a population larger than any European city of the time. But how did they do it? And why is this not common knowledge today? While the Aztecs bathed daily, using natural soaps made from plants and perfuming themselves with fragrant flowers, the Spanish were notorious for their poor hygiene. In fact, the Aztecs were shocked by how dirty the invaders were. Imagine that. The so-called civilized Europeans were seen as uncouth by the people they came to conquer. This was a time when European cities were plagued by filth, overcrowding, and disease. Cities like London, Paris, and Seville were notorious for their narrow, unpaved streets choked with garbage, human waste, and animal carcasses. Open sewers ran through many streets, contaminating water sources and spreading diseases like dysentery and the plague. Bathing was rare, as many Europeans believed it opened the pores to disease, and personal hygiene was often neglected. But how did a civilization without horses, without iron, and without wheels achieve such a high standard of cleanliness that it put Europe to shame? Tenochtitlan wasn't just clean, it was a marvel of engineering. Fresh water flowed into the city through aqueducts, while an ingenious waste collection system ensured that the streets remained spotless. Human waste was recycled as fertilizer for the chinampas, the floating gardens that fed the city. This wasn't just a city, it was a self-sustaining ecosystem. How did the Aztecs achieve such sophistication centuries before modern urban planning? Yet despite its brilliance, Tenochtitlan's story remains largely untold. How could a city so advanced, so prosperous, and so ahead of its time be so forgotten? What can we learn from the Aztecs about sustainability, urban planning, and resilience? And why does the world still underestimate the achievements of ancient civilizations? To find out, we are going to hear the first-hand accounts recorded by the Spanish invaders when they captured the city in 1519. In the heart of the Valley of Mexico, surrounded by towering mountains and set in the middle of shimmering lakes, stood one of the most remarkable cities of the ancient world, Tenochtitlan. When Spanish conquistadors first laid eyes on this Aztec capital in 1519, they were struck with disbelief. Here was a city that rivaled, and in many ways surpassed, the greatest cities of Europe. With its intricate canals, towering temples, and thriving markets, Tenochtitlan was a marvel of engineering, cleanliness, and abundance. But what truly set it apart was its advanced systems of food supply, water management, and hygiene, systems that left the Spanish in awe. Bernal Díaz del Castillo, a soldier in Hernán Cortés's army, could hardly believe what he saw. He described Tenochtitlan as a place of enchantment, a city rising from the water like a dream.
We were amazed and said that it was like the enchantments they tell of in the legend of Amadis, on account of the great towers and buildings rising from the water, and all built of masonry.
The city's streets were wide and meticulously planned, some lined with water canals for canoes, others paved and bustling with activity.
The streets are very wide and straight, and some are half land and half water, and are navigated by canoes, All the streets have openings through which the water flows, and at these openings, some of which are very wide, there are bridges made of very large and solid beams.
Diaz del Castillo noted the sheer scale of the markets, which dwarfed those in Europe.
The city has many squares where markets are held and trading is carried on. There is one square, twice as large as that of Salamanca, all surrounded by arcades, where there are daily more than 60,000 souls buying and selling.
Tenochtitlan was not just a city of stone and water, it was a city of life. Gardens flourished everywhere, filled with fruit trees, flowers, and medicinal herbs. The Aztecs even integrated nature into their urban design, creating a harmony between the built environment and the natural world.
There are many kinds of trees and sweet-scented flowers, and there are gardens with many kinds of fruit trees and medicinal herbs.
Fresh water flowed into the city through an ingenious system of aqueducts, supplying fountains and homes. Francisco López de Gómara, Cortés's chaplain, marveled at this feat of engineering.
There are many fountains of sweet water in the city, and the water is brought in by aqueducts from the springs of Chapultepec, which is 2 leagues distant.
But perhaps what most astonished the Spanish was Tenochtitlan's cleanliness. In an era when European cities were plagued by filth and disease, Tenochtitlan had a sophisticated waste collection system. Human waste was carefully gathered and used to fertilize the chinampas, the famous floating gardens that fed the city.
There are dung collectors who go about the city gathering the refuse and excrement, which they take to the chinampas to fertilize the soil.
Sahagún also noted their frequent bathing and meticulous cleanliness.
They wash their bodies frequently, and they use a kind of soap made from the fruit of the copalsocotl tree, which lathers well and cleanses the skin.
At the heart of Tenochtitlan's prosperity were the chinampas, artificial islands built on the lake. These floating gardens were incredibly fertile, yielding multiple harvests each year and providing food for the city's massive population.
They have gardens of flowers and vegetables, which are planted on rafts made of reeds and covered with earth, and these float on the water. They are so fertile that they yield crops several times a year. The chinampas are arranged in neat rows, separated by canals that allow canoes to pass through. The farmers move between them in small boats, tending to their crops with great care. It is a sight to behold, a city of gardens floating on the water. They grow maize, beans, squash, and flowers, and the soil is so rich that it requires little effort to cultivate.
Bernardino de Sahagún, in the Florentine Codex, described the construction and maintenance of the chinampas in detail.
The chinampas are built by weaving together reeds and stakes to form a raft, which is then covered with mud and soil from the lake bed. Willow trees are planted at the corners to anchor the chinampa and prevent it from drifting. Over time, the roots of the trees grow into the lake bed, creating a stable foundation.
Francisco Cervantes de Salazar, a Spanish historian, wrote about the chinampas in his Crónica de la Nueva España, published in 1560.
The chinampas are a marvel of agriculture, producing an abundance of food with minimal labor. The farmers use a system of crop rotation and intercropping to maximize the yield of their plots.
They used a particularly sophisticated form of intercropping called the milpa system that utilized the symbiotic relationship that occurs from planting corn, beans, and squash together in close proximity. The corn stalks provided support for the climbing bean vines, while the beans fixed nitrogen in the soil, benefiting all 3 crops. And the large squash leaves provided ground cover and retaining moisture.
And they fertilize the soil with compost made from lake sediment and human waste. This makes the chinampas incredibly productive, and they are the backbone of Tenochtitlan's food supply.
The result of this agricultural ingenuity was a city of unparalleled abundance. The markets of Tenochtitlan overflowed with food, offering a variety and quantity that stunned the Spanish.
The market of Tlatelolco is so large and well organized that it puts the markets of Seville and Constantinople to shame. There are separate sections for every kind of goods: food, clothing, pottery, jewelry, and even live animals. The market is so crowded that it is difficult to move through it, and the noise is deafening. The Aztecs have a system of barter and trade that is both efficient and fair. They use cacao beans as a form of currency, and the prices of goods are regulated by the market officials to prevent cheating.
The city is so well organized and clean that it puts our cities in Spain to shame. The streets are swept, the canals are free of refuse, and the people are well dressed and prosperous.
If you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a like and consider subscribing. Check out our website for a selection of fascinating and free ebooks. Thanks for watching.